Fake Dating, Real Fire, Chapter 1, Terms and Conditions. The first time I saw Adrian Vale in person, he was leaning against the polished marble column of the Grand Mercer Hotel, like he owned the damn building. Maybe he did. Black suit, no tie, the top two buttons of his crisp white shirt undone just enough to hint at tan skin and something dangerous underneath. His dark hair was slightly tousled, as if he had just dragged impatient fingers through it. He looked bored, powerful, irritatingly gorgeous, and he was staring straight at me. I should have looked away. I didn't. The ballroom behind me hummed with pre-gala chaos. Servers rushed past with trays of champagne. Crystal chandeliers blazed overhead, throwing fractured light across polished floors. The city's elite were already filtering in, all couture gowns and $1,000 smiles. I tugged at the neckline of my fitted emerald dress, trying to breathe through the nerves clawing at my ribs. This was my company's make-or-break fundraiser, and I was about to walk in with the one man in Manhattan I publicly loathed. Adrian pushed off the column and approached, slow and deliberate. Each step felt calculated, predatory. "Lena Mercer," he said, voice smooth as aged bourbon. "You clean up well." I snorted softly. "Fuck you, Vale." His mouth curved. Not offended. Amused. "That's not in the contract." The contract. 6 pages of cold, clinical clauses outlining how we would pretend to be madly in love for the next 3 months. Appearances at events, public displays of affection, carefully curated photographs, no real emotional entanglement, no actual relationship. Just business. Because my startup needed investors, and his image needed softening after a string of ruthless acquisitions that had earned him the charming nickname corporate executioner. We were a mutually beneficial lie. "Let's go over this one more time," I muttered as he stopped in front of me. Too close. His cologne was clean and sharp, cedar and something darker. We're affectionate, but not obscene. We look genuine. No surprise stunts. His gaze dropped to my mouth. "You're nervous." "Of course I'm nervous." He stepped closer. God, the heat rolling off him felt deliberate. His hand slid to my waist, fingers splaying over the curve of my hip. Firm, possessive. Through the thin fabric of my dress, his touch burned. My breath caught before I could stop it. "Relax," he murmured, bending slightly so his lips brushed the shell of my ear. Not a kiss. Not quite. Just close enough to send a pulse of heat straight between my thighs. "I'll take care of you." The words were for the cameras gathering at the ballroom entrance. The reaction in my body was not. "Remember," I whispered, tilting my head up, forcing composure. "This is fake." His eyes darkened. "Of course it is." He lifted my hand and pressed a slow kiss to my knuckles. The gesture looked old-fashioned and romantic. His thumb stroked the inside of my wrist, finding my pulse, feeling how fast it raced. His smirk deepened. "Asshole." Flashes exploded as we stepped onto the red carpet. He pulled me into him, one arm wrapped securely around my waist, fingers spreading wide as if he had every right to hold me there. I slid my hand up his chest, over solid muscle hidden beneath tailored fabric. The cameras ate it up. "Adrian, how did you two meet? Is this a serious relationship? Are wedding bells coming?" He didn't hesitate. He looked down at me like I was the only thing in the world worth looking at. "I've known Lena for years," he said smoothly. "I was just waiting for her to stop pretending she hated me." Laughter rippled. I rolled my eyes theatrically, then leaned up on my toes and kissed his cheek. A simple, controlled brush of lips. His jaw tightened under my mouth. He turned his head slightly at the last second, and suddenly that controlled brush became dangerously close to his lips. The crowd gasped. Heat flared across my skin. When I pulled back, his eyes were blazing. "That wasn't in the script," I hissed. "Relax," he murmured again. "You're doing beautifully." Inside the ballroom, the lights dimmed and music swelled. Crystal glasses clinked. Conversations buzzed. Adrian didn't release me. His hand remained on my lower back as he guided me through clusters of guests, fingertips tracing lazy, maddening patterns just above the curve of my ass, subtle enough to pass as affectionate, intimate enough to make my stomach twist. "You're enjoying this," I muttered under my breath. "Immensely." "You're a bastard." "You signed the paperwork." I stopped near the bar and turned to face him fully. Close enough that our bodies nearly touched. Close enough that I could see the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw, the tiny scar near his left eyebrow. "You think this is a game," I said. His expression shifted just slightly. Less teasing, more intent. "No," he said quietly. I think this is leverage, and I think you're smart enough to use it. There it was, the real Adrian Vale. Sharp, calculating, focused. It should have grounded me. Instead, I noticed the way his gaze dipped again to the neckline of my dress. The way his hand flexed at my waist. You're staring, I said. You wore that dress knowing I would. My cheeks flushed. Get over yourself. He leaned in, voice lowering. You're shaking. I was. Not from fear. From the electric awareness thrumming under my skin every time he touched me. A slow song began drifting through the ballroom speakers. He extended his hand. Dance with me. That's not required until the second event. Then consider this a rehearsal. I should have refused. Instead, I placed my hand in his. His palm was warm, rougher than I expected. Strong fingers closed around mine, guiding me onto the dance floor. His other hand settled at my waist again, pulling me flush against him. Too close. My breasts brushed his chest with every breath. His thigh pressed between mine as we moved, slow and deliberate. My hand rested on his shoulder, then slid up slightly, fingers grazing the back of his neck. His body was solid heat, hard muscle, controlled power. Careful, he murmured. You're gripping me like you mean it. Maybe I do. The words slipped out before I could stop them. His grip tightened. The air between us thickened. We swayed to the music, bodies aligned. The world faded to blurred silhouettes and glittering lights. Tell me something, he said softly, his lips hovering near my temple. When you agreed to this arrangement, did you consider what would happen if it stopped feeling fake? My pulse slammed against my ribs. That won't happen. You sound very sure. I am. He shifted his thigh slightly, and the movement dragged delicious friction along my inner leg. My breath hitched, traitorous and sharp. His mouth brushed just below my ear this time. A whisper of heat. Your body disagrees. A shock of desire curled low in my stomach. I hated that he noticed. Hated that he was right. Don't flatter yourself, I managed. He chuckled, low and intimate. The song ended. Applause rippled, but he didn't step back immediately. For one suspended second, we stood there, chests rising in sync. Eyes locked, his hand slid slowly from my waist to the curve of my lower back. Lower. Testing. I swallowed. If you cross a line, I warned, voice unsteady, I'll walk. His thumb traced the bare skin where my dress dipped open. And if you don't want me to stop? The question landed heavy and electric. I stared at him, at the hunger flickering behind controlled composure, at the promise of something reckless and consuming. This was supposed to be strategy, public relations, optics, not this raw, crackling tension that felt like standing too close to an open flame. 3 months, I said quietly. That's all this is. His gaze softened, just barely. 3 months, he agreed, but the way his fingers lingered at my back told a different story. Across the ballroom, more cameras lifted. He leaned down, capturing my mouth in a kiss that was still technically innocent. Closed lips. Brief. But his hand tightened at my waist. My fingers curled in his jacket, our bodies pressed together with unmistakable heat. The crowd erupted in delighted murmurs. When he pulled away, his eyes were dark, almost feral. Smile, he whispered. I did. Because the worst part was not that Adrian Vale was dangerous. It was that I wanted to see just how badly we could burn. Chapter 2, Controlled Damage. The kiss should have ended the performance. Instead, it detonated something. By the time the applause faded and the string quartet slipped into another polished arrangement, my pulse still hadn't leveled out. Adrian's hand remained firm at the base of my spine, thumb stroking slow, possessive circles against the exposed skin there like he was claiming territory. We were still standing too close. Too fucking close. Ease up, I muttered through a smile meant for a passing donor. People are staring. That's the point. His breath ghosted over my mouth as he said it. I swallowed hard and stepped back before I did something reckless like drag him back into another kiss, just to see if it would feel as explosive the second time. The space between us felt wrong. Cold. I hated that I noticed. You're enjoying this too much, I was folding my arms loosely, pretending composure. Adrian adjusted his cufflinks, calm as ever. You're the one who just melted into me on the dance floor. I did not melt. He raised one dark brow. You were practically purring. Go to hell. His smile was slow and devastating. If you ask nicely. Heat flooded my face. He knew exactly what he was doing, pushing just far enough to keep me off balance, teasing the edge of something we weren't supposed to touch. We had rules, clear, Clinical. Clean. No real intimacy. No actual sex. No emotional entanglement. Public affection was fine, but it had to be controlled, curated, calculated. Not whatever the hell that dance had been. The auction portion of the gala began, and Adrian guided me toward our reserved table. His hand found my waist again, automatically, fingers flexing against the curve of my hip. Even when he wasn't looking at me, he was touching me, a silent reminder. We sat side by side, thighs brushing under the tablecloth. I felt every inch of contact through the thin fabric of my dress. His leg was solid muscle and heat. My body reacted embarrassingly fast, like it had been waiting for the friction. I shifted slightly. His hand dropped to my knee under the table. Casual, almost lazy. My breath stuttered. Adrian, I warned softly. His gaze remained on the stage, expression unreadable. Smile. I forced one as a camera panned over our table. His fingers traced a slow path just above my kneecap. Not high enough to be scandalous, not low enough to be innocent. "You're playing with fire," I whispered. "Correction," he murmured back. "We are." His thumb pressed lightly into the sensitive inner edge of my thigh. I inhaled sharply. He finally looked at me, and damn him, he looked satisfied. "Relax," he said, voice low and rough. "If you tense up like that, people will think I'm actually doing something indecent." "You are doing something indecent." He leaned closer, his mouth near my ear again. "You have no idea how indecent I could be." A pulse of heat shot straight through me. Fuck. I should have shoved his hand away. I should have drawn a line. Instead, my fingers curled around the edge of the tablecloth, and I let him keep touching me, because part of me wanted to know how far he'd push it. The auctioneer's voice droned on about luxury vacations and rare art pieces. I barely heard a word. My entire focus narrowed to the way Adrian's thumb was now drawing deliberate circles against my inner thigh, teasing higher, testing boundaries. I shifted again, this time intentionally pressing my leg harder against his. A challenge. His jaw tightened. "You're not as innocent as you pretend to be," he murmured. I never pretended to be innocent. His hand stilled. Then, slowly, he withdrew it. The loss of contact felt like a cold splash of water. He picked up his champagne glass as if nothing had happened. I hated the flicker of disappointment that twisted inside me. "You're enjoying this game," he said quietly. "I don't play games." Bullshit. His eyes locked on mine, dark and intense. "You walked into this arrangement knowing exactly what it would do. You knew proximity would blur lines. You knew we'd push each other. You're giving yourself too much credit." "Am I?" He leaned in again, this time without touching me. The lack of contact was almost worse. "You looked at me on that dance floor like you wanted to tear my clothes off." My breath caught. "You're delusional." "Am I?" he repeated, voice dropping even lower. "Because when I had my thigh between yours, you gripped my shoulder like you were hanging on for dear life." A flush crept down my neck. He wasn't wrong. That terrified me. I stood abruptly, smoothing my dress. "I need air." His gaze followed me as I walked toward the terrace doors, heels clicking sharply against marble. The night air hit me like a slap. Cool, sharp, necessary. The city stretched below, glittering and alive. I gripped the railing and inhaled deeply, trying to steady the wildfire in my chest. This was supposed to be simple. Pretend affection. Strategic optics. No emotional mess. No desire. The terrace door slid open behind me. Of course it did. Adrian stepped out, shrugging off his jacket. The night breeze caught his shirt, outlining the hard planes of his chest and abdomen beneath the fabric. He rolled his sleeves up slowly, exposing strong forearms dusted with dark hair. Jesus. "Running away already?" he asked. "I'm not running." "You look like you are." I turned to face him. "You don't get to toy with me just because we signed a contract." His expression shifted slightly, something sharper cutting through the amusement. "I'm not toying with you." "You had your hand halfway up my thigh in a room full of investors. And you didn't stop me." The words hit hard. No, I hadn't. He stepped closer, not touching me this time, just invading my space with his presence alone. "Tell me to stop," he said quietly. The city noise hummed below us. My heart pounded loud enough to drown it out. "Stop," I whispered. He held my gaze. Then he stepped back. Simple as that. No argument, no smirk, just compliance. The sudden distance felt like a punch to the gut. "That's what I thought," he said softly. "What does that mean?" "It means you don't actually want this to stay clean." Anger flared. "You think you've got me figured out?" I think, he said, stepping forward again slowly, deliberately, that you're tired of pretending you don't feel anything. He reached up and tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. The gesture was almost gentle, intimate. My breath hitched. This is dangerous, I said. His hand slid from my hair to the curve of my neck, not gripping, just resting there, warm and steady. Everything worth having is. His thumb traced the line of my collarbone. I should have moved. I didn't. His gaze dropped to my mouth again. Slow, intent. You kissed me back, he said. It was for the cameras. There are no cameras out here. The words hung heavy between us. The city lights reflected in his eyes, making them look almost molten. My body betrayed me. Leaning slightly into his touch, he noticed. Of course he did. Tell me again this is fake, he murmured. It is. My voice came out thin. His hand slid lower, resting at my waist, fingers flexing, pulling me closer, but still leaving a fraction of space between our bodies. That's not what your body says. His thigh brushed mine again. Heat surged. You're infuriating, I breathed, and you're turned on. The bluntness of it made my stomach flip. I shoved lightly at his chest. He didn't budge. Arrogant bastard. Lena, he said, and my name in his mouth sounded like a warning and a promise all at once. If we're going to sell this, we need chemistry. You can't fake what's already there. There is nothing there. He laughed softly. Lie to yourself if you need to. Then, without another word, he stepped back fully. The space between us widened again. Cool air rushed into the void where his heat had been. We have 3 months, he said, voice returning to that calm, controlled register. Plenty of time to decide how far we're willing to take this. He slipped his jacket back on, all polished composure once more. And for the record, he added, glancing at me over his shoulder as he moved toward the door, I haven't even started pushing. The terrace door closed behind him, leaving me alone with the city lights and the pounding of my pulse. 3 months. If this was what barely holding back felt like, I wasn't sure either of us would survive actually letting go. Chapter 3, Friction. The car ride back from the gala was a mistake. Not because of the press, not because of the headlines already lighting up social media with grainy photos of Adrian Vale kissing me like he meant it. The mistake was the silence. We sat in the back of his town car, Manhattan sliding past in streaks of gold and neon. The privacy divider was up, the driver invisible, the air inside thick and charged. Adrian's thigh was pressed against mine. Not by accident. I could have shifted an inch to the left and broken contact. I didn't. Neither did he. My heels were off, abandoned on the floorboard. The hem of my dress had ridden up slightly, exposing more of my legs than was strictly decent. His gaze had dipped there at least 3 times. I counted. You're staring again, I said finally, my voice lower than usual. He didn't look away. You're letting me. There was no smirk this time, no teasing lilt, just fact. I dragged my eyes from his face to the city lights outside the window. We put on a good show tonight. Investors seemed impressed. They were more than impressed. Good. That kiss is already trending. My stomach flipped. You turned into it, I said. That wasn't planned. I know. Silence again. His hand rested casually on his thigh. So close to mine, it felt like a deliberate threat. The tension in the car coiled tighter with every passing second. Why did you come out to the terrace? I asked quietly. He didn't hesitate. Because you were overwhelmed. That wasn't your responsibility. No, he agreed, but I wanted it to be. The honesty caught me off guard. I looked at him again. The streetlights cut sharp lines across his face, strong jaw, focused eyes. He looked less like a corporate predator right now and more like a man trying very hard to hold something back. You said you haven't even started pushing, I murmured. His jaw flexed slightly. I meant it. My pulse kicked up. And what happens when you do? His gaze slid slowly down my body, then back up again. Deliberate, heated. You won't be asking me to stop. The blunt confidence made my breath hitch. Cocky bastard. Realistic. The car slowed. I glanced outside. We weren't at my building. This isn't my apartment. No, he said calmly. It's mine. I turned fully toward him. Excuse me? You left your coat at the gala. My place is closer. You can warm up, call a car, and leave. My heartbeat thudded harder. Or, I asked. His eyes darkened. Or you can have a drink and decompress like 2 adults who just survived a media frenzy. I should have told the driver to reroute. Instead, I stayed silent as the car pulled into a sleek, glass-fronted high-rise overlooking the river. Fuck. The elevator ride up to the penthouse was worse than the car. Smaller space. More awareness. The faint hum of machinery and the steady rise in altitude did nothing to calm the electricity humming under my skin. He stood beside me, not touching, but close enough that the heat of him seeped into my side. When the doors opened, I stepped out first. The penthouse was exactly what I expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows, clean lines, expensive art that looked like it cost more than my yearly salary. The city stretched out beyond the glass, glittering and untouchable. Nice place, I said. It's quiet. He loosened the collar of his shirt and rolled his shoulders once, like he was shaking off the weight of the evening. You want a drink? He asked. Yes. Whiskey? Make it strong. He moved toward the bar, sleeves still rolled, muscles shifting under crisp white fabric. I watched him pour 2 glasses, the amber liquid catching the light. He handed one to me. Our fingers brushed, a small touch. It burned. I took a slow sip, the whiskey biting down my throat, grounding me. You realize this is a terrible idea, I said. Which part? Being here. His gaze flicked over me again. You're free to leave. I didn't move. He set his glass down on the marble counter. So why are you still standing there? The question hung heavy. Because I was curious. Because I was attracted to him. Because I wanted to know what would happen if we stopped pretending we weren't teetering on the edge of something reckless and consuming. Because, I said slowly, I don't like unfinished business. A slow smile curved his mouth. And what business is unfinished? I stepped closer. Close enough that I could see the faint pulse in his throat. The part where you claim I'm turned on, I said, and you think I don't want this to stay clean. He went still. You want to test that theory? My breath came out unsteady. Yes. The word felt dangerous. He didn't touch me immediately. Instead, he reached up and brushed his knuckles lightly down my bare arm. Slow, intentional. Watching my reaction like he was studying a market trend, goosebumps exploded across my skin. Your body reacts before your brain does, he murmured. Shut up. His hand slid lower, tracing the curve of my waist. Not gripping, just mapping. You're shaking again. So are you. That earned me a flash of heat in his eyes. Careful, he warned softly. Or what? He stepped into my space, forcing me back until my hips bumped lightly against the edge of the bar. The contact sent a jolt through me, his hands planted on either side of me, not touching yet, caging without actually trapping. The air between us felt like a live wire. You think this is a power game, he said quietly. It's not. What is it then? It's control. His gaze dropped to my mouth again. And you're losing yours, I swallowed. You're not touching me. Not yet. The words were a promise. His hand finally moved, sliding to my waist again, fingers curling slightly into the fabric of my dress. He didn't pull, just held. The heat of his palm seeped through the thin material. You said no actual sex, he reminded me, voice low and rough. That was your rule. It still is. Good. His other hand came up, brushing lightly along my jaw, thumb grazing the curve of my lower lip. The touch was almost tender. My breath hitched hard. You're playing a dangerous fucking game, I whispered. So are you. He leaned in slowly, close enough that our noses almost brushed, close enough that I could feel the heat of his breath on my mouth. Tell me to stop, he murmured. The words again. An exit. A choice. My hands came up, gripping the front of his shirt, fisting the fabric. Stop, I whispered. He held my gaze. Then he didn't move away. Instead, his lips brushed mine, soft at first, testing. I should have pulled back. Instead, I kissed him, harder. His hands tightened at my waist, pulling me flush against him. My body molded to his instinctively, the solid length of him pressing against me in a way that made heat pool low and urgent. The kiss deepened, still closed mouth but fierce. His hand slid up my back, fingers splaying wide, mine tangled briefly in his hair, tugging. He groaned softly against my mouth. The sound shot straight through me. Fuck, I breathed when we broke apart for air. He rested his forehead against mine, breathing just as hard. This, he said roughly, is exactly why this is a bad idea. Then why are we still doing it? His thumb traced the curve of my spine again, because neither of us actually wants to walk away. The truth of it settled heavy in my chest. We weren't pretending anymore. Not in this moment. This wasn't for cameras, not for investors, not for image management. This was raw and real and dangerously addictive. His hand slid down to my hips, gripping firmly. If we keep going, he said, voice tight, we break the rules. My heart pounded. Then don't break them. His eyes searched mine. You're not afraid of me, he said quietly. No, you should be. Why? Because when I decide to push, he murmured, brushing his lips lightly along my jaw this time, I won't stop halfway. Heat flared through me again, sharp and intoxicating. I tilted my head slightly, giving him more access without thinking. His mouth hovered near my neck, not kissing, just close enough to make my skin ache for it. 3 months, I whispered. He exhaled slowly. 3 months, but his hands didn't let go, and neither did I. Chapter 4, Breaking Point. I should have left. That was the only rational move left on the board. Instead, I was still pinned between Adrian Vale and the cold marble edge of his bar, his hands gripping my hips like he was memorizing the shape of me. The city glittered behind him through the massive windows, 1,000 tiny lights witnessing the moment we both pretended wasn't spiraling out of control. His mouth hovered near my neck, not touching, just breathing heat against sensitive skin. My pulse was a riot. Don't, I said softly. It didn't sound convincing. It sounded like a dare. His fingers flexed. You don't want me to? He asked, voice rougher than I'd ever heard it. I swallowed. My hands were still fisted in his shirt, knuckles white against crisp fabric. That's not what this is, I said. He leaned back just enough to look at me. His eyes were dark, pupils blown wide, jaw tight with restraint. Then what the hell is it? My chest rose and fell too fast. It's tension. Chemistry. A fucking bad decision. His mouth twitched, but there was no humor in it. Good, he said quietly. At least we're being honest. His thumb slid along the curve of my waist again, slow and deliberate. Every inch of contact sent sparks racing through me. You like control, he continued, gaze locked on mine. So do I. But this isn't about control anymore. Then step back, I challenged. He didn't. Instead, he leaned in again, lips brushing lightly along my jaw. The contact was barely there, but it hit like a shockwave. I sucked in a sharp breath. Tell me to stop, he murmured again, that same dangerous invitation. My body betrayed me before my brain could catch up. I arched slightly into him. He noticed. Fuck, he muttered under his breath. His hand slid up my back, fingers spreading between my shoulder blades, pulling me closer. Our bodies aligned fully now. No space, no pretense. I could feel the hard line of his body against mine, the restrained strength in every muscle. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't polite. It was raw. My fingers slid from his shirt to his shoulders, gripping hard. He felt solid, real, alive under my hands. This is crossing lines, I whispered. Then draw them, he said, his mouth grazing just below my ear. The sound that left my throat was embarrassingly soft. His hand drifted lower, skimming down the curve of my spine, stopping at the dip above my ass. Not squeezing, just resting there, warm and heavy. I felt claimed. The thought made my stomach tighten. You don't get to touch me like you own me, I said, breathless but steady enough. His grip tightened slightly. I don't own you. Then what is this? He pulled back just enough to meet my eyes. It's two people who have wanted each other for a long time finally admitting it. My heart stuttered. That's a stretch. Is it? He moved one hand from my back to my thigh, fingers tracing the outside seam of my dress. Slow, teasing. Not indecent, but deliberate. You hated me, I said. I respected you. That's not the same thing. For me, he said, it usually is. His fingers slid slightly higher along my thigh, still over fabric, still controlled, but the movement was enough to make my knees threaten to give out. You're shaking again, he murmured. Stop pointing that out. Then stop reacting. I glared at him. He leaned down suddenly and kissed me again. This time there was no hesitation. No testing. It was fierce and hungry and full of everything we'd been holding back. My hands flew into his hair without thinking, gripping hard enough to make him groan against my mouth. The sound vibrated through me. His hands tightened at my hips, lifting me just enough to reposition me more firmly against the bar. The cool marble pressed against the back of my thighs, the heat of him burning against the front. The contrast made my head spin. His mouth moved against mine with controlled intensity. No crossing into something we couldn't come back from, just enough to make my entire body light up. When he finally broke the kiss, we were both breathing hard. Fuck, I whispered again. He rested his forehead against mine, eyes closed for a second like he was fighting himself. You're going to ruin me, he said quietly. A strange thrill shot through my chest. You're not that fragile. He let out a humorless laugh. You have no idea. His hand slid from my thigh back to my waist, fingers slipping under the thin edge of my dress just enough to brush bare skin. My breath caught sharply. He froze. We both felt it. That shift, that line. His eyes snapped to mine. This is where we decide, he said, voice low and tight. We either stop right now or we stop pretending. The air felt too thin. My body was screaming to keep going. My brain was screaming to pull back. Why does it have to be all or nothing, I asked, because I don't do halfway. His honesty was brutal. My fingers traced lightly down his chest over the buttons of his shirt, feeling the steady thrum of his heart beneath. You said no actual sex, he reminded me. I know, and I agreed. You did. But if we keep going like this, he continued, gaze intense, that rule won't survive. The heat in his eyes wasn't just lust. It was hunger, want, something deeper and more dangerous. I exhaled slowly. Then maybe we don't keep going tonight. The words felt like ripping something open. His jaw tightened. You're walking away. Yes, even though you don't want to. That's not the point. His hand slipped from under my dress. The loss of contact felt immediate and sharp. You're scared, he said quietly. Of you? I challenged. Of losing control. The accusation hit too close. I don't lose control, I said. You already have. Silence stretched between us. He stepped back finally, releasing me completely. The sudden absence of his body made the room feel colder. I meant what I said, he told me, voice steady again, controlled. When I decide to push, I won't stop halfway. And I meant what I said, I replied, smoothing my dress, trying to steady my breathing. 3 months? That's the deal. His gaze dragged over me one last time, heated but restrained. You're going to regret setting that limit. Maybe. I grabbed my heels from the floor and walked toward the door. My legs felt unsteady, my skin still humming from his touch. I paused with my hand on the handle. If this is just chemistry, I said without turning around, it'll burn out. Behind me, I heard him move closer, though he didn't touch me. Chemistry like this doesn't burn out, he said softly. It explodes. The words settled deep in my chest. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway, cool air washing over overheated skin. As the elevator doors closed in front of me, my reflection stared back, flushed and shaken. 3 months. If this was what barely holding the line felt like, I wasn't sure how much longer either of us could pretend we weren't already halfway to breaking it. Chapter 5, Public Property. The headlines hit before my coffee did. Lena Mercer and Adrian Vale, Manhattan's most unexpected power couple. There were photos from every angle. The dance, the kiss, the way his hand sat at the curve of my back like it belonged there. The terrace shot, grainy and distant, but intimate enough to spark speculation. I should have felt triumphant. The exposure alone was worth millions in investor interest. Instead, my body remembered his mouth on mine and burned. My phone buzzed nonstop, texts from colleagues, emails from potential backers. One particularly dramatic message from my best friend demanding details and accusing me of climbing the hottest corporate tree in the city. If only she knew how close I'd come to doing exactly that. I was halfway through drafting a response to an investor when my assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. He's here. My pulse kicked hard. Who? Adrian Vale. Of course he was. I smoothed my blazer, adjusted the pencil skirt that hugged my hips, and told myself this was business. Strictly business. When he walked into my office, every rational thought scattered. Dark charcoal suit this time. No jacket, just a tailored vest beneath. The sleeves of his white shirt were rolled up again, exposing forearms that looked unfairly strong. He carried himself like he owned every room he entered, including mine. Good morning, he said, voice smooth. You didn't call. I didn't need to. Arrogant asshole. I gestured toward the seating area. This is a workplace. I'm aware. He didn't sit. Instead, he stepped closer to my desk, gaze sweeping over me slowly. You're staring, I said flatly. You wore that skirt knowing I would. Heat climbed my neck. I wore it because I have a meeting in an hour. The sound was low, appreciative. My skin prickled under his gaze. We need to talk about damage control, I said, forcing professionalism. The headlines are aggressive. We should pace the narrative. Damage control? His mouth curved slightly. The stock price on my company went up 3% overnight. This isn't just about your stock. No, he agreed softly. It's about you. His tone shifted, less corporate, more personal. I stood from behind my desk to regain some ground. Big mistake. Now we were at eye level. Close. Too close. You showed up unannounced, I said. Why? His eyes searched mine for a long moment. Because you walked out last night like you were running from a fire. My chest tightened. I walked out because we agreed on boundaries, and you were about to break them. So were you. Yes. The honesty was brutal. Silence stretched between us, thick and electric. Did you sleep? He asked suddenly. I hesitated. Not much. A flicker of something dark and satisfied crossed his face. Good, I blinked. Good? I didn't either. My stomach flipped. He stepped closer, invading my space again. Not touching, just close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him. You left with my taste still in your mouth, he said quietly. The words sent a shock straight through me. This is a professional setting, I hissed. His gaze dropped briefly to my lips. Then we'll keep it professional. His hand brushed lightly against my waist as if by accident. It wasn't. My breath hitched. You're playing with fire again, I said. He leaned in slightly. You didn't stop me last time. That was different. How? I didn't have an answer. His hand slid more deliberately to my hip now, fingers curling lightly against the fabric of my skirt. I should have stepped back. I didn't. You're at work, I whispered. And you're shaking. Stop saying that. Stop doing it. My heart hammered in my chest. He wasn't even doing much. Just standing there, just touching me lightly. But the memory of last night hung between us, heavy and intoxicating. You came here to test me, I said. No. Then why are you looking at me like that? Like what? Like you want to bend me over this desk. The words slipped out before I could filter them. His pupils flared. Careful, he murmured. My skin felt too tight. I'm not the one who showed up uninvited. He moved closer, forcing me back a step until the edge of my desk pressed against my lower back. That wasn't an invitation, he said quietly. That was an observation. The heat between us snapped tighter. His hand slid from my hip to the small of my back, resting there firmly, not pushing, just anchoring. You said 3 months, he continued. We need to look convincing. We already do. Not like this. His thumb traced a slow line along my spine. Like what? I asked, breath unsteady. Like we can't keep our hands off each other. My stomach dropped. People already think that. Do you want them to think we're lying? The strategic logic hit. He wasn't wrong. Public chemistry had to feel real, because it was. Fine, I said. We have a lunch with the board tomorrow. We can escalate there. His gaze darkened. Escalate. Publicly. He exhaled slowly. You're testing me now. Maybe. His fingers tightened at my back, pulling me just slightly forward until our bodies brushed. The contact was enough to make my breath stutter. This is your office, he said quietly. Your territory. Yes. And you're letting me corner you. My pulse thudded. I'm not cornered. No? His free hand came up, resting flat against the desk beside me. Looks like it. My hands moved to his vest, gripping lightly. If I tell you to stop, I said softly, will you? Yes. No hesitation. The certainty in his voice made my chest tighten. And if I don't? His gaze burned. Then I don't. The air felt thin. My fingers traced slowly down the front of his vest, feeling the hard lines beneath. His body reacted subtly, muscles tensing under my touch. You're enjoying this, I murmured. More than I should. His mouth hovered close to mine again. Say it, he whispered. Say what? That you want me to keep going. The words lodged in my throat. I wanted him. That wasn't the problem. The problem was how much. His hand slid from my back to my hip again, gripping more firmly this time. My body responded instantly, hips pressing forward slightly before I could stop myself. He groaned softly. Fuck, Lena. The sound of my name in his mouth felt sinful. My phone buzzed loudly on the desk. We both froze. Reality slammed back in. I stepped away first. He let me. The distance felt sharp and abrupt. I grabbed my phone, grateful for the interruption, even as my body protested. It's my assistant, I said, voice strained. I have 5 minutes before the next meeting. He adjusted his vest slowly, composure snapping back into place. Then I'll leave. He walked toward the door, then paused. Lunch tomorrow, he said. You want escalation. You'll get it. The promise in his tone made my stomach tighten again. And Adrian? He turned slightly. If you push too far, I warned, I won't hesitate to walk. His eyes held mine. You won't. The confidence should have pissed me off. Instead, it made heat coil low in my stomach again, and he left without another word. When the door closed behind him, I sank back against my desk, heart racing. This wasn't just attraction anymore. It was a power struggle, a test of control, a slow, deliberate stripping away of restraint. 3 months suddenly felt like a very long time. And if he kept pushing the way he promised he would, I wasn't sure I'd be the one deciding where the line was drawn. Chapter 6, Escalation Clause. The board luncheon was a goddamn spectacle. Private rooftop, white linen tables, crystal stemware catching sunlight like tiny, weaponized prisms. Half the city's old money sitting in pressed suits pretending they weren't salivating over numbers. And me. And Adrian. We arrived separately. We did not stay separate. The moment he stepped onto the terrace, conversation dipped, not enough to be obvious, just enough to feel. He wore navy today, perfectly tailored. No tie again, because he understood the subtle art of looking powerful without looking rigid. His hair was slightly windswept from the elevator ride up. It made him look reckless in a way that did unfair things to my nervous system. His eyes found me immediately, locked. Slowly, deliberately, he crossed the terrace toward me, like a man who had already decided the outcome. This was the escalation I had asked for. My stomach tightened. Adrian? One of the board members greeted warmly. Glad you could make it. I wouldn't miss it, he replied smoothly. His gaze never left mine. When he finally reached me, he didn't hesitate. His hand slid around my waist in one fluid motion, pulling me into his side like I had always belonged there. My breath hitched. He leaned down, pressing a slow kiss to my temple. Not rushed, not staged, intimate. I've missed you, he murmured just loud enough for nearby ears to catch. Heat flared through me. You saw me yesterday, I replied. Not like this. His hand spread wide against my lower back, thumb brushing the edge of bare skin where my blouse tucked into my high-waisted skirt. He was already pushing. Investors were watching. Phones were discreetly angled. He knew it. I forced a soft smile and slid my hand up his chest, resting it there possessively. My fingers curled slightly into the fabric of his jacket. Careful, I whispered under my breath. You said you wouldn't stop halfway. His eyes darkened, and you asked me to escalate. Touché. We took our seats side by side at the long table. The sun beat down warm against exposed skin, his thigh pressed firmly against mine beneath the linen tablecloth. Not accidental. The meeting began. Projections, growth charts, strategic partnerships. I spoke when required, confident, controlled, all while hyper-aware of the heat radiating from his body beside me. Halfway through the second presentation, his hand slid onto my knee. Calm, possessive. I didn't react outwardly. My pulse did. His fingers traced slow patterns over the fabric of my skirt. Not indecent, not obvious, but intimate enough to make it difficult to concentrate. You're distracted, he murmured without looking at me. You're touching me. You like it. I inhaled slowly through my nose. I like results. He leaned slightly closer, lips near my ear. Then let's give them a show. Before I could respond, his hand slid higher. Just an inch. Still respectable. Still within the bounds of plausible deniability. But my body reacted instantly, muscles tightening, breath stalling. Across the table, one of the investors smiled knowingly. They were eating this up. The power couple narrative, the chemistry, the tension. It made us look unstoppable. My hand moved to his thigh in retaliation, squeezing lightly through expensive fabric. He stilled. I leaned in slightly. Careful, I whispered, his jaw tightened. You're not the only one who can push. His hand slid back down slowly, retreating to my knee. Strategic, controlled. Fuck. By the time dessert arrived, the air between us felt electric. Every accidental brush of skin under the table felt deliberate. Every glance held too long carried weight. When the meeting adjourned and guests began mingling, Adrian didn't release me. Instead, he guided me toward the far edge of the rooftop, away from the densest crowd, but still within view. You're playing a dangerous game, he said quietly, once we were semi-alone. You started it. No, he replied evenly. You invited it. The wind caught my hair, whipping strands across my face. He reached up and tucked them back gently, fingers lingering at my jaw. The touch felt softer than everything else had been today, which somehow made it worse. You wanted escalation, he continued. You got it. Investors are convinced. That wasn't all you were doing, I said. His mouth curved slightly. No. His hand slid to my waist again, always my waist, like it was his favorite anchor point. You liked it, he said. I held his gaze. Yes. Honesty tasted sharp and dangerous. His thumb pressed lightly into the curve of my hip. You didn't stop me. You didn't give me a reason to. His breathing shifted, slightly heavier. This ends badly, he murmured. Probably. And you're still here. So are you. For a long second, we just stood there, bodies close, but not fully touching. The tension between us felt like a taut wire. You think you're in control, he said. I am. He stepped closer. Now we were flush again. Publicly appropriate, privately volatile. No, he said softly, you're reacting. The accusation hit. Before I could respond, he leaned down and kissed me. Not a peck, not polite. A slow, deliberate press of his mouth to mine that lingered just long enough to make it clear this wasn't a staged performance. Gasps sounded faintly behind us. He pulled back, eyes dark and intent. That, he said quietly, was escalation. Heat flooded every inch of me. You're insane, I breathed. Possibly. His hand slid lower along my back, fingers grazing the curve just above my ass again. Brief. Controlled. But enough. My nails dug lightly into his shoulder through his jacket. You're going to make me lose my mind, I said. His expression shifted, less teasing now, more raw. I already have. The admission hung heavy. This wasn't just a PR stunt anymore. This was something else, something hungry. You realize, I said quietly, if we cross that line, we can't uncross it. I know. And you won't be able to compartmentalize it. His jaw tightened. I don't want to. The honesty hit like a punch. Before I could respond, someone approached us. Another board member with questions about funding rounds. Adrian stepped back smoothly, composure snapping into place like armor. But his hand never fully left my back. Even as he discussed numbers and strategy, his thumb traced idle patterns against my spine. Subtle, intimate, claiming. By the time the luncheon ended and guests began filtering toward the elevators, my body felt overheated and overstimulated. He walked me toward the exit, hand firm at my waist. You proved your point, I said quietly. So did you. And nothing, he replied. We're just getting started. The elevator doors slid open. We stepped inside alone. The space was small, private, charged. The doors closed with a soft thud. Silence. Then his hands were on me again. Not frantic, not uncontrolled, but firm. His palm pressed against the small of my back, guiding me against the mirrored wall. His other hand slid to my hip. This is still public, I warned, breath uneven. He leaned down slowly. Then keep your voice down. His mouth claimed mine again. Deep, hungry. My hand slid up his chest, gripping tightly as heat surged between us. The mirrored walls reflected the way our bodies aligned. The way his hand gripped my waist like he was holding something precious and dangerous at the same time. The elevator hummed downward. Time felt compressed. His lips moved along my jaw, down the curve of my neck, not crossing into indecency, but close enough to make my knees weaken. 3 months, he murmured against my skin. 3 months, I echoed, barely coherent. And we haven't even broken the rules yet. The doors chimed softly. He stepped back just before they opened. Composure restored, jacket straightened, expression calm, but his eyes were still burning. As we walked out into the lobby, I realized something terrifying. We weren't testing boundaries anymore. We were circling them. And the moment one of us stopped pretending restraint mattered, everything was going to explode. Chapter 7, Pressure Points. It started with a photograph. Not the kiss in the elevator, not the hand on my waist at the luncheon, not even the terrace shot from the gala. This one was worse. It was taken from the street below Adrian's building the night I left his penthouse. Grainy but unmistakable. Me stepping out of his front entrance at nearly midnight, hair disheveled, lips swollen, expression wrecked. The headline was a smirk in bold font. Late night negotiations? My phone exploded before sunrise. Investors loved it. The board loved it. My PR team, however, did not. By the time I reached my office, my head was pounding and my nerves were already frayed. The chemistry narrative was working, but the insinuations were escalating faster than I'd anticipated. Which meant one thing. So would he. My assistant barely had time to greet me before the office door opened. Adrian didn't knock. He never did. He looked composed, but there was a sharpness in his eyes I hadn't seen before. Not playful, not teasing, possessive. You left alone, he said without preamble. I blinked. Excuse me? The article implies otherwise. So I don't like implications. The raw edge in his voice made something hot and dangerous flare in my chest. You don't get to decide what headlines imply, I shot back. That's the cost of this stunt. His jaw tightened. This isn't a stunt, isn't it? Silence cracked between us. The door clicked shut behind him. We were alone. "You walked out of my building?" he said slowly, stepping closer, "looking like you'd been thoroughly fucked." Heat flooded my face. "You don't get to talk to me like that." I just did. My pulse hammered. "You're not my keeper." His eyes darkened. "No," he agreed quietly, "but you walked into my space. You kissed me like you meant it. You let me touch you like you wanted more." My breath turned uneven. "And then you left." The accusation hung heavy. "I left because we have rules." "Fuck the rules." The words came out low and rough. I stared at him. "You were the one who said we break them. We can't uncross that line." "I remember." "Then what the hell do you want from me?" He closed the distance between us in 2 strides. Not touching yet, but close enough that I felt his heat like a physical weight. "I want you to stop pretending you're unaffected." "I'm not pretending." "You are." His hand came up, not to grab, but to trace lightly along my collarbone. Slow, intentional. "You think this is about optics," he continued. "It's not." "Then what is it about?" His thumb dipped lower, brushing the edge of my blouse. "It's about the fact that you left my place, and I haven't been able to think straight since." The honesty hit like a punch to the ribs. "Adrian," I whispered, "I don't like not having control," he said bluntly. "And you make it impossible." "You think you're the only one?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. His gaze sharpened. "Say that again." "You think you're the only one who hasn't been able to think straight?" I said, voice low and strained. "I left because if I hadn't, I wouldn't have." He went still. "Wouldn't have what?" Stopped. The word dropped heavy between us. His hand slid to my waist automatically, fingers curling into the fabric of my skirt. "Then why stop?" he murmured. "Because this wasn't supposed to be real." "It is real." The blunt certainty in his voice sent heat crashing through me. "You don't get to rewrite the agreement just because you're turned on," I shot back. He stepped closer. "So are you." My back hit the edge of my desk. Again. "Don't," I warned. His hand moved to the small of my back, pressing me lightly against the polished wood. Not rough, not violent, but firm. "You walked out of that elevator yesterday," he said quietly, "with your hands still gripping my jacket like you didn't want to let go." My breath hitched. "And you think that was acting?" His mouth hovered inches from mine. "Tell me it was." I couldn't. He saw it. "Fuck," he breathed. His hand slid up my back, fingers threading into my hair, not pulling, just holding. "Do you have any idea what you do to me?" he asked softly. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might crack my ribs. "You make me reckless." "That's not my responsibility." "No," he agreed. "It's mine." He leaned in. The kiss wasn't rushed this time. It wasn't staged. It wasn't for cameras or board members or investors. It was slow, deep, controlled in a way that felt more dangerous than anything frantic. His hand tightened in my hair just enough to tilt my head back slightly. His other hand anchored at my waist, holding me steady as heat flooded through every nerve. My fingers slid up his chest, gripping his shirt. He tasted like coffee and frustration. I kissed him harder. His breath caught. "Lena," he murmured against my mouth, like a warning. But he didn't pull away. My body pressed into his instinctively, seeking contact, seeking heat. The friction was subtle but electric, my skirt riding up slightly as his thigh shifted between mine. A low sound escaped him. "Jesus." My nails scraped lightly down his chest through the fabric. "You're the one who said fuck the rules," I whispered. His jaw clenched. "You want this?" "Yes." The word came out raw. He froze for a split second. Then his mouth was on mine again, fiercer now. Still controlled, still stopping short of crossing the final boundary, but loaded with hunger. His hands slid down my sides, gripping my hips, holding me firmly in place. "Last chance," he muttered against my lips. "Tell me to stop." My fingers tightened in his shirt. "Don't." The word felt like a match dropped into gasoline. He lifted me slightly, setting me fully on the edge of the desk. My breath hitched hard at the shift in height. His hand stayed at my waist, thumbs brushing the sensitive skin just above my skirt line. The contact was intoxicating. He didn't push further, didn't cross the line. But the implication was there. The power, the proximity, the heat. "You're playing with something you can't control," he said roughly. "So are you." His mouth moved to my jaw, down the curve of my neck, pressing slow kisses that stopped just short of indecent. Each one sent heat spiraling lower. My hand slid into his hair again, gripping hard. "Fuck," he muttered against my skin. A sharp knock hit the office door. We both froze. Reality crashed back in. My assistant's voice filtered through. 5-minute warning for your call. Adrian stepped back immediately, just like that, composure snapping into place. But his chest was rising hard. My legs felt unsteady as I slid off the desk. He adjusted his shirt calmly, eyes still burning. This is spiraling, I said quietly. Yes. And you're not pulling back. No. My pulse kicked. Why? He held my gaze. Because I don't want to. The blunt truth left no room to hide. We either stop this now, I said, or we admit it's not just strategy. He stepped closer one last time, not touching. It hasn't been strategy for a while. My throat tightened. 3 months, I said again. He shook his head slightly. 3 months isn't going to save you. The words were soft, certain. He moved toward the door. Dinner tonight, he said without looking back. Not public, not staged. My stomach flipped. That's not part of the contract. Neither is this. The door closed behind him. I stood there for a long moment, body still humming, lips still swollen, heart still racing. This wasn't a calculated escalation anymore. It was a countdown. And if I showed up to dinner tonight, I wasn't sure there would be anything left of the line we kept pretending still existed. Chapter 8, After Hours Dinner was a mistake before it even began. Not because of the restaurant, not because of the private corner table tucked behind velvet drapes, dim lighting casting everything in gold and shadow, not because Adrian looked like sin wrapped in a black suit with his collar open and his sleeves pushed up just enough to expose the strength in his forearms. It was a mistake because this wasn't for anyone else. No cameras, no board members, no investors watching our body language like stock tickers. Just us. He stood when I approached the table. His gaze dragged over me slowly, openly. No pretense, no polite restraint. You wore red, he said quietly. The dress was fitted, low across my shoulders, hugging my hips before falling in a sleek line to my knees. I hadn't worn it for optics. I did, I replied. His jaw tightened slightly. Why? Because you said 3 months wouldn't save me. And I wanted to see if you were right. Silence. Heavy. Charged. He pulled my chair out for me, hand brushing deliberately along my lower back as I sat. Not accidental. Not subtle. I felt it everywhere. Dinner started normally enough. Wine was poured. Plates arrived. Conversation skimmed over business, mutual contacts, surface-level topics. But beneath the table, his leg brushed mine and didn't move away. You're quiet, he observed. I'm thinking. About? Consequences. His mouth curved slightly. Always so responsible. And you're not. He leaned back slightly in his chair, gaze steady. Not when I want something. The words landed low and dangerous. What do you want? I asked, holding his gaze. He didn't hesitate. You. The bluntness sucked the air from my lungs. This isn't a negotiation, I said carefully. No, and you don't get to own me because we signed paperwork. I don't want to own you. His tone shifted. I want you to choose me. The vulnerability under the dominance caught me off guard. My pulse stuttered. You're asking for something you don't usually ask for. Yes. He set his wine glass down slowly. And I don't like that you make me want it. The honesty was sharp and raw. My throat felt tight. You're used to control, I said. Yes. And this feels out of control. He held my gaze. It feels inevitable. The words sent heat spiraling low in my stomach. Under the table, his hand slid to my knee again. Slow, intentional. His thumb traced a lazy line over the inside curve of my leg, just high enough to make my breath catch. No one could see. No one knew. It made it worse. Adrian, I warned softly. His eyes darkened. Tell me to stop. There it was again, that door, that choice. My fingers tightened around my wine glass. Not here. His thumb paused, then continued. Then where? The question wasn't teasing. It was serious. The tension snapped tight inside my chest. He wasn't playing anymore. He was asking. The waiter approached to clear plates. Adrian's hand withdrew instantly, composure flawless. Calm. Polished. But when we were alone again, the heat returned immediately. You came tonight knowing this would escalate, he said quietly. Yes. And you're still holding back. Yes. Why? Because I'm afraid of what happens if I don't. Because if we cross that final line, this stops being strategy and starts being real. Because I'm already too far gone. Because I don't want to lose myself in you, I said instead. Something in his expression shifted. Not anger, not frustration. Recognition. You won't, he said. You don't know that. He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. I've built empires. I've dismantled competitors twice my size. I don't lose myself in anything. Comforting. But you, he continued, ignoring the sarcasm, don't make me feel lost. You make me feel sharp, focused, alive. The confession hit harder than any flirtation. And that scares you? I asked. Yes. He didn't sugarcoat it, and it scares you too. The truth of it burned. Dinner ended in a blur. He paid without looking at the bill, stood, offered his hand. I took it. His fingers closed around mine firmly, not possessive but grounding. The night air outside was cool against overheated skin. The city hummed around us, traffic lights flickering, distant sirens wailing. Come home with me, he said quietly. Not commanding, asking. My pulse kicked hard. That's not a small ask. I know. And you won't stop halfway. No. The honesty was relentless. If we go back to your place, I said slowly, we break the rule, yes. And you won't pretend it's just physical. No. And if this implodes, his gaze held mine steadily, then it implodes. The lack of fear in his voice was intoxicating. You're insane, I whispered. Probably. He stepped closer, not touching yet, but you're still here. My breath came shallow. He wasn't cornering me. He wasn't forcing. He was standing there, waiting, choosing to let me decide, and that somehow made it worse. My hand slid from his into the front of his jacket, fingers gripping the lapel. Last chance, I said softly. His jaw tightened. Don't give me one. The word snapped something loose inside me. I kissed him first, hard, no restraint. His hands were on me instantly, gripping my waist, pulling me flush against him on the sidewalk like he didn't care who saw. The kiss was deep, fierce, charged with everything we'd been circling for weeks. Car horns sounded faintly somewhere behind us. He broke the kiss only long enough to murmur, "We're not finishing this out here." Then take me somewhere private, I shot back. His eyes flashed. The ride to his penthouse was silent, but not controlled. His hand stayed on my thigh the entire time, fingers flexing slightly, as if he were physically restraining himself. I leaned into him deliberately, pressing closer. When the elevator doors closed behind us, the restraint snapped. He backed me gently against the mirrored wall, mouth crashing into mine again. His hand slid up my sides, gripping firmly but not roughly. My fingers tangled in his hair, tugging hard enough to make him groan. The sound vibrated through me. "You have no idea," he muttered against my mouth, "how long I've wanted this." "Then stop talking," I breathed. His mouth moved down my jaw, along my neck, stopping just short of crossing into territory that would strip away the last shred of restraint. The elevator chimed. We didn't separate this time. He walked me backward out into his penthouse, hands never leaving my body. The door shut behind us with a heavy click. Silence filled the space. He looked at me. Not heated, not teasing. Serious. "If we do this," he said quietly, "we're done pretending." My chest rose and fell rapidly. "We're already done pretending." He stepped forward slowly. "No contracts, no clauses, no optics, just choice." "Yes." The word left my mouth steady. His hands came up to frame my face, thumbs brushing my cheeks gently. The touch was unexpectedly tender. "Then don't hold back," he said softly. And this time, when he kissed me, there was nothing restrained about it at all. Chapter 9. No more lines. The door hadn't even fully latched before his mouth was on mine again. Not controlled. Not careful. Not the measured, deliberate restraint he'd been clinging to for weeks. This was hunger. His hands framed my face, thumbs pressing firmly along my jaw as he kissed me like he'd been starving. I met him with equal force, fingers digging into his shoulders, pulling him closer instead of away. The penthouse was silent, except for our breathing and the sharp slide of fabric against fabric as our bodies collided. "You're sure?" he murmured against my mouth one last time, voice rough, almost strained. "Yes." The word was barely out before his hands dropped to my waist and he walked me backward until the cool glass of the floor-to-ceiling windows pressed against my spine. The city sprawled behind me in 1,000 glittering lights. I barely saw it. All I felt was him. His body pinned mine, solid and hot and relentless. The friction alone was enough to make my head spin. His hands slid slowly up my sides, pushing my dress up inch by inch, not tearing, not rushing, just deliberately exposing more skin to the cool air. "Fuck," he muttered when his palms met bare thigh. The word vibrated through me. My hands moved to his jacket, shoving it off his shoulders. It fell to the floor somewhere behind him. I went for his vest next, fingers fumbling with the buttons because I didn't want to wait. He caught my wrists gently but firmly. Slow down. You're the one who said don't hold back. Not the same thing. His eyes were darker than I'd ever seen them. Not just desire, something deeper. Something raw and unguarded. He released my wrists and instead guided my hands up over his shoulders, pinning them lightly against the glass above my head. Not trapping. Holding. Look at me, he said quietly. I did. The intensity in his gaze made my pulse throb low and urgent. I'm not going to rush you, he continued, voice low and steady despite the tension thrumming through him. We're not sprinting toward a cliff. We're already off it, I breathed. A corner of his mouth twitched. Maybe. His mouth moved down slowly, leaving a path of heat along my jaw, my throat. Not frantic, not sloppy. Controlled but consuming. His teeth grazed lightly along my skin. Not enough to hurt, just enough to make my back arch instinctively. My hands tightened above my head. He noticed. His grip on my wrist softened, but he didn't let go. You like that, he murmured against my neck. Yes. The honesty came easier now. His hands released mine and slid down my arms instead, fingers tracing every inch like he was memorizing me. When they reached my waist again, he pulled me forward off the glass and into him fully. No space. The friction was unmistakable now, the heat between us building fast. He exhaled sharply. You feel that? He asked. Yes. My hands moved back to his chest, pushing his vest open fully this time. I dragged my fingers down the hard planes beneath his shirt, feeling muscle tense under my touch. He hissed softly through his teeth. Careful. You first. His hand slid under the hem of my dress now, palms flattening against my bare thighs. The contact sent a shock straight through me. He lifted slightly, enough to make me wrap one leg around his hip instinctively. The move pulled us even closer. Jesus, he muttered. His forehead pressed against mine as he adjusted his stance. One hand braced at my lower back to keep me steady. You're not walking away from this, he said. I'm not trying to. Good. He moved us away from the window slowly, guiding me backward through the penthouse. Every step was deliberate. Me retreating. Him advancing. Predatory. By the time the back of my legs hit the edge of his couch, I was breathing hard. He didn't push me down. He just looked at me. You're shaking, he said quietly. So are you. A low, rough laugh left him. Yeah. His hands came up to the zipper at the back of my dress. He paused. Last chance? Stop asking. The zipper slid down slowly. The sound was louder than it should have been. The dress loosened around my body, slipping down my shoulders as his hands followed the fabric's descent. The cool air hit heated skin, and I sucked in a breath. His gaze tracked every inch revealed, not hungry in a careless way, focused, intent. Fuck, he whispered. There was reverence in it. He let the dress fall completely, then stepped forward, forcing me to sit back onto the couch without breaking eye contact. He knelt in front of me. The sight alone sent heat crashing low in my stomach. You have no idea, he said softly, hands sliding slowly up my thighs again. How many times I imagined this? My fingers threaded into his hair. Tell me. His mouth pressed lightly to the inside of my knee. Not obscene, not crossing the final line, just a slow, deliberate kiss that made my head fall back. I imagined you losing control, he said against my skin, but not like this. How then? Fighting me. I did fight you. His mouth moved higher, trailing heat. You surrendered. The word made my stomach tighten. I chose, I corrected breathlessly. His hands gripped my hips, strong and grounding, as he rose back up to his full height in front of me. Yeah, he agreed quietly. You did. He leaned down and kissed me again, slower now, deeper, less frantic. His hands roamed my back, my waist, my sides, learning every curve. The couch dipped under our shifting weight as he moved over me, bracing himself with one arm while the other hand slid down to grip my thigh firmly. Every touch felt amplified. Every breath felt charged. You're still thinking, he murmured against my mouth. I can't help it. Stop. Not how my brain works. His mouth curved slightly. Then let me give it something else to focus on. His hand slid higher along my thigh again, fingers tightening. The pressure alone sent sparks shooting through me. I gasped softly. There it is, he murmured. My hand slid down his back, nails scraping lightly through fabric. You like having control, I said. Yes, and you like giving it up. The words hit unexpectedly deep. Only with you, I whispered. He froze for half a second. Then his mouth came down on mine again, harder. The shift in intensity was unmistakable. This wasn't just physical anymore. It wasn't just heat. It was trust. His hands slowed again, movements more deliberate, more careful despite the urgency in his body. He wasn't claiming. He was choosing. Over and over. 3 months, I breathed against his mouth. He exhaled sharply. 3 months isn't going to be enough. For what? For this. He shifted slightly, bodies aligned perfectly now, friction impossible to ignore. My breath hitched sharply. You're right, I said. About what? This doesn't burn out. His eyes locked onto mine. It explodes. And when he kissed me again, there was no contract, no rule, no stage performance left between us. Only heat. Only choice. Only the fire we'd both finally stopped pretending wasn't already out of control. Chapter 10. Real Fire. 3 weeks later, the headlines changed. Not about the chemistry, not about the stolen kisses, or the way Adrian Vale's hand never seemed to leave my waist in public. They changed because a rival firm launched a hostile move against my company. Aggressive. Calculated. Designed to corner me. And the story shifted from Manhattan's hottest power couple to whether Lena Mercer could survive without hiding behind her billionaire boyfriend. That was the word they used. Boyfriend. Like I was ornamental. Like I wasn't the one who built my company from the ground up. The board panicked. Investors called with thinly veiled concern. PR spun narratives about strength and unity. But the question lingered. Was I standing on my own, or was I leaning on him? I sat in my office long after sunset, heels kicked off, hair loose, staring at the city lights and feeling something ugly twist in my chest. The door opened without a knock. Of course it did. Adrian stepped inside, suit jacket slung over his shoulder, expression sharp. You should have called, I said quietly. You're under attack. I noticed. He crossed the room in seconds. They're trying to destabilize you, he said. It's transparent. Doesn't matter if it works. His jaw tightened. I can shut it down. I know. The silence that followed was heavy. You can't, I said finally. His eyes snapped to mine. I can. I know you can. He went still. And that's exactly the problem. The air shifted. You think I'd undermine you, he said quietly. I think you'd protect me. Yes, even if it means everyone thinks I can't protect myself. He took a step closer. Let them think whatever they want. I don't. My voice didn't shake. I built this. I bled for it. I'm not going to have it framed as something you saved. His gaze searched my face, not angry, just intense. You think I see you as weak? No. Then what the hell are we arguing about? Power, I said. He exhaled slowly. This again. Yes, this again. I stood, closing the distance between us deliberately. You don't get to ride in like a fucking knight every time something catches fire. His mouth twitched slightly. I'm not a knight. You're worse. A faint, dark smile. I'm aware. I stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating off him. You can advise me, I said quietly. You can stand beside me, but you don't get to fight this for me. His eyes burned into mine. And if they hit harder, I hit back. The silence stretched, then something in his expression softened. Not weakness, respect. You're not asking for help, he said. I'm not. You're setting terms. Yes. His mouth curved slowly. Jesus, you're infuriating. You like that. Fuck, I do. The tension shifted. Not combative anymore. Electric. You think I'd ever see you as something that needs saving? He asked. I think you're used to fixing problems. I am. And I'm not a problem. His hand came up, sliding to my waist automatically. The contact was familiar now. Natural. You're not, he agreed. His thumb traced lightly along the curve of my hip. You're a force. The words landed deep. And forces, he continued softly, don't need saving. They need backing. My pulse stuttered. Stand with me, I said. I always do. And if I fall, he stepped closer, bodies aligning instinctively, then I fall with you. The raw certainty in his voice made my chest tighten. This wasn't about contracts anymore, or optics, or strategy. It was about choice, over and over. His hand slid up my back slowly, fingers threading into my hair, not possessive, grounding. You're not alone in this, he said quietly. I know. Good. His mouth hovered inches from mine. You walked into my life like a controlled burn, he murmured. Contained, strategic. And now everything's on fire. A slow smile curved my lips. You hate losing control. I do, and you didn't lose it. His brow furrowed slightly. No? You chose it. The realization flickered across his face. This wasn't chaos. It was deliberate. He leaned in slowly, pressing his forehead to mine. You're right, he said quietly. I chose you. The words settled deep in my chest. Not ownership, Not conquest, choice. My hand slid up his chest, feeling the steady strength beneath fabric. And I chose you, I replied. His breath hitched slightly. The kiss that followed wasn't frantic. It wasn't about heat exploding out of control. It was slow, deep, certain. His hands moved over my body with familiarity now, not testing, not pushing, just knowing. My fingers slid into his hair, holding him close, anchoring him. He lifted me easily, setting me on the edge of my desk like he had weeks ago. But this time there was no argument, no lines, no negotiation, just us. You're still shaking, he murmured against my mouth. Shut up. A low laugh vibrated through him. His hand slid down my thighs slowly, lifting one leg around his waist. The movement felt natural now, intimate, familiar. I love that you fight me, he said quietly. I love that you don't break. His eyes locked onto mine. Say that again. I love that you don't break. Something fierce and vulnerable flashed across his face. His mouth moved down my jaw, along my throat, leaving heat in its wake. My hands tightened in his hair as my head tilted back, giving him access. Every touch felt deliberate, not claiming, choosing. His hands slid up my sides, pushing my blouse open just enough to expose skin beneath. His mouth followed the path slowly, reverently. Still think this burns out? He murmured against my skin. No. Still think 3 months was a limit? I let out a shaky breath. No. He pulled back just enough to look at me. Good. His lips claimed mine again, slower now, deeper, anchored in something solid. Outside my office windows, the city glittered like it always had. Headlines would shift again tomorrow. Competitors would maneuver. Investors would analyze. But none of that felt unstable anymore. Because this wasn't a PR stunt. It wasn't fake dating. It wasn't leverage. It was fire. And we weren't trying to contain it anymore. We were building something in it. His hands gripped my hips firmly, grounding us both as our foreheads rested together, breathing in sync. You're not public property, he said quietly. You're my partner. The word hit harder than anything else. Equal, I replied. Always. The heat between us wasn't explosive now. It was steady, controlled, chosen. And when he kissed me again, it wasn't about crossing a line. It was about knowing there weren't any left to draw.